Dick Tracy is based off the comic strip, directed by Warren Beatty, starring Warren Beatty as the titular Dick Tracy. Now, I wasn't really interested in this movie except for the Weekly Planet podcast was doing like a 30s era comic book movies for their videos called The Caravan of Garbage. They do like a sort of like video about a topic and then they go into trivia and the backstory. Also, there's a really funny line in the movie, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, where if you're unfamiliar with that movie, Benjamin Button was a weird old man that grew younger. So when he works on a boat, his captain asks him if he's ever been with a woman. And since he looks 80 years old, the captain takes him to a whorehouse. And he obviously has the virility of a teenager, though, even though he looks like he's 80. So he's with a whore, and she's basically like, "What's wrong with you? Like, slow down." And he's like, "I can't." And she's like, "What are you, Dick Tracy or something?" So so like Dick Tracy is not really in the cultural zeitgeist, but I still want to watch the movie. So Warren Beatty plays Dick Tracy. He's like your stereotypical detective man with a girlfriend who's great, and they meet a kid who becomes a sidekick of sorts. He's just called the Kid, and he's going up against a vicious upstart criminal called Lips, played ferociously, amazingly well by Al Pacino. Al Pacino's just giving his all. He's chewing scenery. He's like doing the Scent of a Woman. He didn't do Scent of a Woman yet, but before this, like a character from Scent of a Woman, imagine that on steroids. That's his portrayal as Lips and Dick Tracy. He's just like so over the top. He's got a huge hunchback, and all the other like vicious gangster criminals all have like weird, like exaggerated deformities, like, you know, huge noses and like huge chins and like all sorts of weird freaks. It's because it's based off the comic strip. It's drawn, you know, like exaggerated in the comic strip, so they wanted to bring that to the real life. They also do that with the production value. There's a lot of bright colors, boxy sort of set design. This movie was probably super expensive, and it won the Oscar for Best Production Design, so there's that. But overall, the movie's kind of just boring. It's Dick Tracy, you know, he has his girlfriend, she's like, he takes her for granted. There's a kid. The villains are like, we want to do things, and then Dick Tracy, like, you know, stops them or gets away because he's awesome. And then they introduce Mr. No One, a mysterious figure who wishes to kill the gangsters, and we don't know who they are, and that ends up being the sort of big sort of push to, you know, that something messing around with the status quo. The status quo is usually gangsters get arrested, you know, they get sweated out, they get released, they never get to prison because they intimidate witnesses, and then, you know, they try to kill Dick Tracy, he escapes or whatever. And, you know, but this Mr. No One sort of throws a wrench into the usual plans of cat and mouse. So overall, there's too much Madonna in this movie. She's really, you know, she sings a lot and she's in it, but I don't like her in this movie. I like her as an artist, but not in this movie. Dick Tracy definitely is very lavish and over the top, and, you know, some people might like it. It's very simple. It's like your basic good guys versus bad guys, pulpy action comic book stuff, but, you know, it's a little old hat. So I give Dick Tracy a 5 out of 10.